what the organization is about, what is its mission, and a little elaboration on it.
Sure. So, Pompeian Charities International, we're a nonprofit organization based out of the United States, and our reach is global. We're currently working with the director of Shalom Academy in Uganda.
Okay.
And they, well, what we're doing in a nutshell is empowering orphanages to be self-sustainable.
Got it.
And so we partnered with the director of the Shalom Academy. She takes care of orphans and needy children. And we're providing them with some goats to build up their first farm.
Okay.
And hoping that these goats will provide either babies for more goats or milk and meat for the children to eat. And they also provide immediate entertainment for the children. There's tons of pictures we have of the kids all petting on the goats, and having a cool experience, because most of them are homeless in Africa, so they don't get to have such a happy-go-lucky experience like that too often.
Wow, that's amazing. So you mentioned that it's a non-profit organization working for the empowerment of children, right? So and it's and we are working with the director of Shalom in Uganda. So is it like because the organization, as you mentioned, like your organization is in United States and the children are in Uganda. So how exactly it got started, and because it's a cross-country kind of like thing going on, I'd like to know a little.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the way the whole business actually was started is a couple years ago, I was faced with homelessness myself and starvation in multiple forms. Still working back some of my muscle, and and I thought to myself, I'm only 25 now, and I was 18 to 22 probably around the time. And I thought to myself, no one should really have to go through this, especially I've gone through this in America, where we're supposed to be in a lap of luxury. And so that's why I started with trying to help kids in Africa, because they're experiencing what I went through, but with a third world environment around them. Yeah. I had the first world conveniences to help keep me alive.
Yeah.
So I want to be their first world assistance to help keep them alive and provide them access to education, opportunity for the future, jobs, and shelter also, most importantly. But I was actually thinking on how to create a animal refugee at first, because I wanted to help animals. And then I incorporated the farming to feed the animals. And a couple years in developing that idea, I realized I'm not helping people yet. And so I finally had the epiphany to build orphanages, farms, so that they can have animals and food for themselves. So now I'm helping the food, the animals, and the people all in one.
Wow. That's such an interesting concept. I never actually thought that you could actually combine these two interests together in the same way and benefit both of them. It's just like super cool that you wanted to create the whole animal shelter kind of thing, but then you realize you're not going to be able to help the people who are actually suffering. Then you combine it up. This is the first time I'm hearing such concept. An orphanage farm. Wow. So this is really nice. So can you tell me, like, since you mentioned that you faced this issues of starvation and homelessness when you were just 18 years old, these personal struggles inspired you to help other people who are actually still suffering out there in Africa. And when did this entire idea actually strike you? Like, in which year? Like, what were you going through at that time, and when did you took this thing up really seriously, that this is something that you decided you would like to really act upon and create something out of it? Because a lot of people think, but hardly a lot of people act on it.
That's a very good question. I'm so glad you asked that, actually. The perfect answer, I think, just comes to mind. I was homeless in Colorado, the mountain region of Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
I was also homeless in Florida, where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
I moved while being homeless with two stray dogs to Colorado to provide them a better home. And I was actually planning on committing suicide in a way, but I didn't want to actually take my own life. I wanted the cold of the mountains to take my life. I wanted to just go out in the mountains and not wake up one morning.
I can understand.
um, it didn't quite happen that way, though. After I rehomed one of the dogs, and I still have one of the stray dogs with me today.
Mm-hmm.
And me and the stray dog, what is now my best friend, we were living in probably negative 45-degree winter, my first winter I've ever experienced from growing up in Florida. Moved to the
My,
mountains, we're in 10 feet of snow. I had ropes hanging in the trees of my camp, and we had so much snowfall that I was snowshoeing to get to my campsite, and my ankles were at where the ropes were tied in the trees.
my
That's how
goodness.
much snow had compacted on the ground. And I personally, I thought, this is it. I'm done. This is the last time I'm going to see the world. Everything is white. It's disappearing. I'm going to disappear next.
My
And
goodness.
I remember there was one day I'm in my tent, and my heater goes out. I finally run out of propane, and it's 3 in the morning, probably negative 45 already. And normally it still goes to a colder temperature for a couple more hours before the sun comes back.
Mm-hmm. Hello?
Sorry, phone
Yep,
call
yep,
come in
yep.
there.
Yeah, yeah, not an issue. Yep.
But and as soon as the heater went out, I looked at my dog, Buddy is his name, and I said, "This is it. This is the night that we're gonna leave, leave the world." And well, sure enough, I woke up 5 hours later, just frigid cold. Me and my dog dug our way out of the tent. I had a stick to keep the roof from collapsing on us because there's so much snow piling up around us. And after that night, I actually moved out of the tent because it did collapse throughout the daytime. But that was the day I stood there in the middle of a world full of white, on mountains full of white. The sun was hitting me, and I thought to myself, if I didn't die that night, then I'm here for a reason. And the whole concept of helping people and animals and plants started to really marinate and incubate in my mind at that point. And that was the turning point where I went from self-destruction, trying to just go out in the woods and die, essentially. That was where I turned and I said, if I'm still here, it's because the universe wants me to do some work for the rest of the universe. And so now I'm out here, finally
Wow.
off the mountain, and I'm doing that work. I live in a house
Wow.
now.
Wow, this is amazing. Oh my goodness. Now, that was like some, could like entirely picturize the entire incident as you were telling me. It's wow, amazing to see that at such intense state of darkness, you turned out with such hope and light, and now you're creating light for other people. Uh, I always felt that whenever people find inspiration, whenever people want to create something way big, that it must have come from some very intense period of their life. I knew something was there, but that was like amazing. The story that you told me, pretty scary, I must tell you. Thinking of all the minus 40-degree temperature is making me feel cold right here, right now.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm shaking right now. Actually, it's funny. I feel cold just thinking about it. I'll walk out into the
Uh,
sunlight here.
yeah, yeah, sure, definitely. So now that I have some clue, like, yeah, how the Pompeian Charity International got started, the inspiration of it. So when did it actually start? When was the at which year? Like, you started this year, last year, like when it started?
So I actually started the business this year,
Hmm.
early in the summer. So
Okay.
maybe
Oh,
June or July.
June, July. Got it. Okay, okay. And how did you connected with the whole Uganda thing, the you said the Shalom Academy and the whole process began? How did that happen?
So that was a fortunate turn of events, just being in the right place at the right time. Online, though, I
Mhm.
had been working on building a media presence up for the business, or a social presence, not a media presence. Um, and I happened to connect or be online at the same time that the Shalom Academy director was. We liked a few things that we saw of each other, and the next thing you know, we were exchanging emails um, and sending goats to her.
Amazing, amazing, excellent. So now, now I understand like, how you got contact with the Uganda thing, and okay. So what is this year's goal for Pompeian Charities International? How does it look like? What is the plan?
This year's goal, well, we've actually already exceeded our goals.
Really?
Thankfully, we've exceeded our 6 month goal mark. So now we're compacting our 1 year goals
Can
into
you tell
our
me a little
6 month.
about like what was the 6 months goal was and how did it happen?
Sure, yes. So at first at first it was just me actually, and I was just hoping to build a board, build a public presence, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe have a website started.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But things really just skyrocketed into motion. So many people have passion towards helping one another, and they love this idea. And everyone sees the potential it has to really change the world as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially since our reach is global, we want to have these projects all over the surface of the earth, not just in
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Africa. And so we formed a board. We have a board of 5 people internationally now, all across the United States, and some in London, the UK, and someone in Africa as well. And
Okay.
in the Middle East as well, we have a board member.
Wow.
So we're actually have good roots going out there, and hopefully we'll have projects started in each of our hometowns. Um, but then
Amazing.
we also met Olive, is our director in Uganda, and she
Mm-hmm.
has been so fantastic with the children of Shalom Academy. If it
Mm.
wasn't for her, we would be 10 years behind, honestly. She
Okay.
has already got a foothold in Uganda. She's already helping children there and has 250 children that she helps with her academy.
Mm.
And so we had her to manage resources in Uganda, so we didn't have to ship people out there and learn the lay of the land.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then now, to answer the second part of your question, our goals have now become to actually
Mm.
start a fundraiser, which we've already started, but to complete the fundraiser
Mm-hmm.
of um, raising the funds for a dormitory. We want to
Okay.
build our first actual site for the children at the Shalom Academy to live and sleep at.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are homeless
Mm-hmm.
and actually go out into the elements, and some of them don't make it back to school.
Mm.
Some of them make it back to school, but with broken limbs or infections, and we want to really help mitigate that. And speaking of infections, even our
Mm.
directors actually just come down with malaria herself
Mm-hmm.
and a few other infections. So it's definitely a very close to the heart issue for all of us at the board. We're putting our lives and our money and our lives into this. We're not taking money out. We're actually completely, our whole board is completely funding the entire thing.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. So you
That's
mentioned
another
this
thing.
this fundraiser is the current goal, and how much is the target for the fundraiser, and how much has been completed as of yet?
So we've only recently started the fundraiser. We're on Facebook. I believe we're only at about $40,
Mm-hmm.
and behind the scenes and everything collected together,
Mm-hmm.
we're probably around $500.
Okay.
This has only been in a couple weeks of work. Um,
And
the
yeah.
goal is
Mm-hmm.
10,000. I believe Facebook says 20,000 is the goal because we want to actually build 2 dormitories.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have $10,000, that'll actually build the first dormitory
Mm-hmm.
for the children. And
Mm-hmm.
we can even start that project with only, I believe, $2,000 to $3,000. The construction can begin. So
Okay.
those are
Mm-hmm.
the minimum to maximum
Got it.
expectations for that project.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So, I just want to recap back into the thing that you mentioned. Pompeian Charities International is something you created, and it's working with Shillong Academy. So, is like Pompeian Charities currently its main project is to fund Shillong Academy in order to build the dormitories. And how exactly Pompeian Charities is different from Shillong Academy? If you can just explain that one to
Yeah, sure thing. So Shalom Academy, they're their own entity. They are a Christian or Catholic derived based uh, industry,
me.
and they're funded through Christian or Catholic ministries and fundraising events and things of that nature. So they have
Mm-hmm.
their own finances and employees and laws to adhere to since they are a local establishment. And we're not funding them or their employees or anything of that nature. We're only funding certain projects that they're willing to work with us on, such
Got it.
as the development of the farm
Mm,
and the security of the children, the
mm,
security of their food,
mm.
medical attentions, and housing.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Now, now that you mentioned, the current goal is $10,000, which will help create the dormitory. The entire construction can start at $2,000 to $3,000 only. So, is the $10,000 goal just for Pompeian Charity, or is it distributed from other people also? Like, how does it look like?
Oh, so this is so the $10,000 goal is our first public opening for a fundraiser. So we want to incorporate our public relationships to build and raise these funds. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of funds coming from the board
Mm-hmm.
on this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the funds right now is from the board. But as time goes on and we get
Okay.
some more advertising started, we hope to see more public support come in.
Okay, okay. And this the $10,000 goal is entirely the goal for Pompeian charity, or
Oh yeah, the $10,000 that'll complete the whole construction from beginning to end and pay
hmm,
for the labor
got it.
of it um, for the
Wow,
first
for
dormitory.
the first
We have
dormitory.
one engineer in Uganda, and that's his estimate: $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
We'll finish it. There might be,
Mm-hmm.
if we're lucky, something left over from that
Got
to
it.
maybe
Got
buy a
it.
couple more goats with.
I understand. And what is the deadline for it? For this goal?
Our deadline was the end of next year for the dormitory to
Mm-hmm.
begin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because we've had so much success, we've actually streamlined that and we want to begin construction on the dormitory by the end of this year.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, this so end of this year in December 2019, we have like October, November, December. Not a lot of time, like 2 months
Yeah,
remaining,
not a
right?
lot of time.
Yeah, that's cool.
I
Like
like
we
to
have like
keep the
three
bar
months.
high. It keeps my
That's really nice. That how streamlined you got it from next year to this year to just 3 months, which is cool. Okay.
absolutely. I honestly, I built a Google document
Hmm.
maybe 7 months ago, 1 month before I built the company, and I had all my goals on that.
Hmm.
And it said for the dormitory or to begin being built on, I think 2020 was my original expectation. So it's
That sounds
The
super fun.
reality is amazing. Once you get your feet on the ground and you start shaking
Yeah.
hands and meeting people like yourself, things really
Mm,
just they take off.
that's really nice to know. How much time are you giving to this project?